Welcome to the Leader You're Becoming podcast. I'm so excited that you're here today. This podcast is me following God. To be totally honest, I'm gonna be as real as I can with this podcast. So if you came for perfect podcast setup, perfect lighting, all that good stuff, that's not what you're gonna get, at least for this first season. We are here to talk about leadership, stewardship in leadership, the leader you're becoming, and ultimately how to create a workplace that people don't hate going to every single day. They actually enjoy it, and that is actually possible. I'm your host, Coach T. A little bit about me. I've spent over 20 years in leadership, some type of leadership position. I work for some of the bigger companies in the world, or at least in the United States, at least one of them in the world. I've had an exceptional amount of leadership training, schooling, and I've been through the grind of corporate America, of working your way up from that manager in training role all the way up into a leadership role. I've been able to run a $300 million region where I had multiple managers, general managers that I had to oversee and coordinate and collaborate with people, ultimately until being a part of a mom and pop shop where we were able to take the company, systematize it, continue to build on the culture, and ultimately grow that business till it sold. So I've been a part of that as well, into private equity. And even today, I'm still working with the private equity group, continuing to grow and build that company. And so while outside of that, have this podcast and my consulting that I've been doing over the years as well. And so it's really, I've been in that fight, I've been in that grind, and this podcast was really built out of the last role, building block, if you will, of being able to work hand in hand with the leader and owner of a business and be that person that really helped them bring it all together, right? Bring it all together for what they wanted at that point in time, which was an exit out of the business. And I really got to see how culture is so critical to being able to exit a company, but really about building a company that people enjoy going to each and every day. And some owners, their goal is not to exit the business, and that's okay. I've been a part of a global organization where they're not selling nothing. They're not selling anything at all. But their business was to continue to create an environment of a business that continues to grow and move forward, and that it creates opportunity for lots and lots of people that are coming out of college, and also continue to serve more clients at different capacities and in different environments. And so I've seen both spectrums, if you will. And for me, I just truly have a heart and a passion for creating something that people enjoy going into each and every day, that serves humanity. And those two things can be true. And I believe ultimately that business is actually a heavenly endeavor. And so in this podcast, I will talk about some scriptures that really resonate with me and how I see them in the framework of business and people, and how that really, I believe, fundamentally shapes how we do things and how prosperous or effective we can be as leaders within businesses. So if you are a leader, a business owner, this podcast is explicitly for you. If you are a C-level executive where you're responsible for a lot of things within the business, this podcast is for you. If you're an inspiring leader who wants to be great at leading others in your role, and you're not doing it from a selfish position, this podcast is for you as well. And guess what? If you're an employee and you don't care nothing about doing no leadership or helping anybody else, this might be a podcast for you. So you can just sit back in the back and say, amen, get better, leader. Amen. And yeah, tell them, Coach T. Make this place better, because I hate coming here every day, right? And so that leads us to our first episode, right? Our first episode, where we're going to start from this, outside of just my passion for what this looks like, is this. And I got my notes, so you're going to see me pick up my notes here and there, because I do believe in being organized, all right? So with that being said, today's episode is entitled, The Leader You're Becoming When No One Is Engaged. I'll say that again. The leader you're becoming when no one is engaged. What does that mean? Where do I get that from, when no one is engaged? Well, one of the studies I like looking at, I saw this the first study, not the first, but the first one for me, which was the Gallup Employee Engagement Survey. It's called the Gallup State of the Global Workplace Report. And I saw the one from 2022. And what stood out the most to me in that report was how disengaged people were at work. Now, as a leader, I saw this firsthand, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and act like I have it all figured out and I know every perfect tip and tactic and how everything works, because leadership is messy, especially when you're the owner of the business. When you have the pressure of payroll, think about that from an owner's standpoint, right? Speak to the owners here directly. You are managing the stress of payroll, managing the stress of making sure everybody is taken care of, and no one seems grateful. No one seems grateful at all about any of it. And you're writing those checks, and every time you give, it feels like there's not anything coming back, or you seem like people are disengaged or frustrated. Well, guess what? It is true, right? And so I saw this, I lived this experience personally, but then when I started to look at the data from a global standpoint, and we'll get into like here within the United States, some of the specific data to us here in the US, it was like just glaringly obvious of like people are disengaged, right? Like just recently, after the pandemic, we had the great resignation where people were quitting and getting more involved in gig work. And now you have this concept where people are talking about silently quitting, because it's kind of like, yeah, I can't just jump from one job to the next job, so I'm just going to stay here until I find something better. But that workforce out there is hard. I've talked to a lot of people, friends, family, and it's not as easy as it seems. Before, it might have been easy to get a job, or it might have been easy to get a job if you just went to another area that was really thriving. That's even hard now, right? And so then it's like, well, I could just work from home. Well, most companies, or not most, but some companies now are like, hey, you got to come back to work. So there's a huge dynamic that is causing a lot of mistrust and disengagement in the workplace right now. And as a leader, the leader that you're becoming, the whole point of this podcast, we have to be aware enough of the situation, but self-aware enough of how we show up every day, how that's actually impacting our employees' disengagement. Point blank and simple. We are the number one contributing factors, and I say we because I'm a part of this too, right? Are the number one contributing factors to employee disengagement. I'll pause for effect. See, when I get fancy, I'll have all the other stuff that'll go there, and probably a video will come up, right? But according to this report, and this is not to shame, or bash. This is awareness, right? As leaders, business owners, executives, we have to look at the reality of our situation if we're ever going to change anything, right? And it shows that literally here in the United States, right here in the United States alone, only 31%, according to the Gallup survey of 2025, the newest one, 31% of people are engaged. So that means, I wasn't a math major, but 69% of the people in your business, more than likely, right? There are some companies that are better, and there are some companies that, like, these numbers are even worse. But the average company right now, you can just look back and say 31% of my people are engaged. That means 69% of the people are not engaged, 52% according to this report, and 17% of people are disengaged at work, right? With 50% of the people intending to leave. That sucks. I don't even know any other best way to say it. That sucks. Imagine that. You look out into your workforce, it's 50 people, 25 people are looking for another job. If you got a 10,000, person company, that means 5,000 people right now are looking for another job, whether they told you or not. And so if you were to take this in, right, it's like, all right, Terrell, well, here we go. This is where we are, right? This is where we are. This is the situation that we're in, where we have disengaged employees. So then why are they disengaged? Well, I said earlier that we as leaders are the number one contributing factor to that, right? It's some of the data on here actually shows that the financial impact to this disengagement right now in the United States is costing, the global economy over $438 billion in lost productivity. $438 billion is lost in productivity because people are disengaged at work. Think about that. The primary reason is managers. it says that manager disengagement dropped from 30 to 27%. Think about that for a second, right? So what that means is we as leaders are constantly trying to strategize, like, what's the new strategy that I can use to, differentiate myself in the market? What's the new marketing thing that I can do that's going to bring more awareness or show how special we are? Or what's the next, employee foosball table? I don't know, right? Like, we can add to the workplace to make things more fun and help employees. But really, here goes the thing. It's really your relationship, my relationship with our people. That is the number one contributing factor to our people being disengaged. And so this podcast episode is, entitled, again, The Leader You're Becoming When No One Is Engaged. This is about you and me as a leader being self-aware of how we show up every day. How we show up every single day matters so much to our people. And one of the things that this report kind of dives into is most leaders are just not aware. They're just not aware that they are the reason. There's an old saying that, I learned years ago and I really took it to heart, was people don't quit companies. They don't. They quit their leadership, or some people would say their manager or their boss, whatever, right? Like, that's who they are quitting. And so if that is the case, the question becomes, who am I as a leader? How am I showing up every day? How am I contributing? Especially business owners, especially this point. You hold the most weight in the business. Now, in one of my roles, I was the integrator. And what that means, this is important. What that means is I was the link between the business, the people and the operations, and the owner and their vision. Right? And so the integrator, you hear about that in EOS. So I was the person who was responsible for bringing the vision of the owner to life through the operations of the people. So my job, I had to see both, right? My job was to see the vision, take a look in our operations, every function of it, right? Sales, marketing, finance, development, etc., the full operations of it, and say, how can both of these things be true, and link it together? And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, the emotional intelligence of the boss, the owner, carries so much weight through the rest of the organization. So much weight, right? Now, if you have an integrator type person, their job is to help filter that emotion, throughout the organization, right? Filter, maybe take some part of the emotion off, keep some part, reframe some of the emotion, and put it through to the rest of the organization. But I can tell you one thing, a person like me in that role, right? Not me as a person, just, not me, Coach C, but the person in that role can only do so much, right? They can only do so much. And so that owner has to be aware of, when I walk into this room, right? What am I carrying into this room? What emotional, luggage am I carrying in? Because the weight of that owner's words is 10 times more weight than the integrator, and that's the person running the business. And it might be 1,000 times the weight of the word of the supervisor on the line, if you will. And so this is a moment where, as a leader, right? Like, as a leader, if you're looking out at your organization and you're saying it's disengaged, like, here goes the hard truth. You got to look in the mirror. Culture is a reflection of the leader. I'll say that again. Culture is a direct reflection of the leader. And as the business owner, you are the number one leader, period. Regardless of however many managers you have, however many executives you have, that you set the tone for everything in that business, right? And oftentimes, as leaders, we can get so caught up in strategy, right? We can get so caught up in marketing. We can get so caught up in the sales process. And we totally neglect, right? Totally neglect the number one thing that can possibly have the biggest financial output of the business, people's production, is actually how you show up every day. Again, pause. How you show up every day and how your emotional state is impacting your team can actually have maybe a 1, 2, 10, or 100x better return than your best marketing idea. What about that for a concept? What if how you showed up as a leader had a 100x return better than your best strategy, better than your next product? Think about that. And I'm just here seeing it from all these different angles, right? Like just I have a good vantage point because I'm the link. I've been the link, right? So I'm just saying, if 69% of people in your organization are disengaged, which is possibly costing you 9, 10, 20, 50% production. If we can just reverse that to 69% of people are engaged, could that be a 3x business? Right there, right in your hands, literally right in your hands. Could that be a 2x, 5x, 10x? What could that be? And it really literally just starts with the leader you're becoming. And when I say the leader you're becoming, right, in this podcast, what I mean by that is there is no static leader, right? Now, there are some things that I don't want to say you might naturally lean into easier than other things, but you are becoming a leader every single day. And how you show up is who you have become based on your past. And so what that means is we can take this static model off of like, well, this is who I am and this is how I am. You get to create that each and every day as a leader. I'll sidestep here for a second. Everyone creates who they are each and every single day. That is the beauty of being human. We get to choose who we are going to be each and every day. And when our choice is outside of what we want, we have the ability to go acquire new information, right? Plug it into what we got, and now we can choose a different person because we have more information, if that makes sense. I'll give an example. If I want to be a better basketball player, let's just use that for example. I played basketball in college, right? If I want to be a better basketball player and I was struggling with my jump shot, for example, well, based on what I'm doing, no matter how much practice I'm doing, I'm not getting over 70%, free throw shooting. I'm just use that for example, right? Well, I can go out and get some more information about best practices for free throw shooting, get a trainer, more information, right? And wisdom now because they've lived through it. And then now I have the opportunity to choose to practice and be the person that shoots 85% from the free throw line. You catching my drift here, right? And so we all have the option to make that choice. Now, as a leader, that is you. If 69% of people in your organization today, and I would ask that you just assume, and I know you can make a out of yourself if you assume, but let's just say, right? 69% of your people are disengaged, right? Or not engaged in some form or fashion. 17% are disengaged. If you can just show up a little bit better emotionally every day, what would that look like? What would it do for your business if you can have that return? What would it do for your business that the people that you had every day when you showed up, they didn't just walk away? Or they didn't just have shallow conversations with you, or they didn't disconnect with you, or they weren't grumbling and complaining and frustrated each and every day and constantly seeming like they're ungrateful. Right? I saw a post a little while ago. It said that, people aren't overworked. They're just tired of working and feeling not seen. That really hit me. Right? People aren't overworked. This isn't a generational issue, as the Gallup survey said. These new kids, they don't know what to do. They don't know how this ain't that. This ain't that. This generation is just like, I'm not going to sit here and be emotionally abused, directly or passively, right? Each and every day. And I'm tired of working hard and not feeling seen. And guess what? As leaders, you have control over how that shows up. Now, you don't have control over how everybody receives everything, obviously, but you do have control over how that shows up, right? And then when what you intended doesn't have the impact that you would want to have, Thank you, Sarah, one of my employees who taught me that, right? You can have intent, but if the impact doesn't happen, then guess what? Then you got to go back as a leader and say, hey, look, I intended for this to have this impact. It obviously did not have this impact. So I'm going to take accountability. Business owner, imagine if you're a business owner to say, I'm going to take accountability that this did not have the impact that I intended. This is what I intend. I'm not lowering the standard for you at all, right? I'm not lowering the standard, but it seemed not to have the impact emotionally on you the way that I intended. So let's deal with what that looks like and how can I support, or how can I bring this to you maybe in a different way that will be more supportive so that we can get the impact. Right? And that impact might be you doing your job more effectively, you making adjustments on your job, whatever that might be, so that we can have what? Better production. Come on. And better production means client serve better. If client serve better, then that means we can make profit. And if we're making profit, we can expand the business. And so this is that ability to say as a leader, I do have 100% control over the steps that I take to increase engagement, right? Like I have 100% control over that. And it actually starts with me. It's not another benefit. It's not higher pay, which is what people think. Oh, we're not making enough money. I know that's what the news media will keep putting out there. People are underpaid, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying that's not true in some forms or factors. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that at all. I fundamentally believe, like, if you want to know my personal opinion, like, I believe you're either underpaid or overpaid. Like, I don't believe anybody's rightfully paid, to just being honest. Like, I just don't believe that. My goal is to continue to position myself that everything that I do from my business job, my own personal business and my job, I could keep positioning myself to keep being overpaid. Like, that's just, and then when I'm like, I'm underpaid, then I take that onto myself and say, okay, well, how can I increase this product, me, so that I'm better positioned where people want to overpay? Simple as that. So with that being said, right, people, yes, they're disengaged because some of it is they feel underpaid. That yes, it is they don't have enough benefits. Yes, it is they don't have work-life balance. I know 6'7", that's how it feels, right? Right? Like yes, all those things are there, but the number one contributing factor above all of that is they can't stand their leader. They can't stand the owner. And sometimes it's not even their direct leader. I'll say this because this is important. I knew I was here at one point. It wasn't my boss that I had the problem with. It was my boss's boss because they were an a-hole. And I knew that poop ran downhill as an employee. And at some point in time, it was going to come down. And I stayed until it came down. And then I was like, I love you, boss. I'm out. Right? I'm out. Or at least I was thinking that at that point in time. I remember. And so with that being said, today is just an opportunity for you as a business owner, right? To say, I want the most out of my business. And hey, I am the unlock to that. C-level executive, I want the most out of this company, my department. And actually, how I show up is the number one unlock to that, at least according to the data, right? According to the data, these are the daily emotions that our people in the United States are feeling each and every day. 50% are stressed, 17% are angry, 22% of people are sad, and 15% of people feel lonely at work. Think about that for a second. Lonely. That's crazy, right? Lonely. And 44% of people feel like they're struggling. And that's up 3%, right? In their general life, their life evaluation, right? And 52% of people are saying they're thriving, which is actually down 4%. They're down 4% just overall in their life. And in their life, 4% of people are suffering. This is the stuff people come into work every day with. And I know, as I was, coming up through the ranks, and I say that like I'm a old guy, and I don't even know what old is anymore at this point. That's what you say after once you pass 40. I'm 41. I don't know what old is anymore, but when you were 20, you're like, oh, that's old. But in all jokes aside, I know we have this philosophy, or we used to have this philosophy. I hope it's not there so much anymore, but I know it was there where, you leave your problems at the door. You leave all that stuff at the door. And I think that is such a discredit and just like dysfunctional. That's a better word that I want to use. Dysfunctional. Because you got this whole person who's a human being, right? They carry emotions with them every day. And I truly believe that we're all spiritual beings as well. You got this whole complete individual person, and you're trying to tell them to leave 2/3 of themselves at the door and just come in with their skills to do the job. I know that sounds beautiful, right? Like that, that old Patriots, just do your job, right? And you have this like, just show up and just do your job as output. I get all that. But this is why 69% of people are disengaged, in my opinion. This is why. This is exactly why 69% of people are disengaged. Is because, and the numbers actually kind of work. I didn't even think about this until now. So this is just pure off the cuff. You're telling 2/3 of that person, oh wow. If I was in church, somebody say amen right now. You're telling 2/3 of that person to stay at home or to stop at the door. Even worse, to stop at the door. You can carry it through the car. You can carry it through getting your Starbucks. You can carry it through all your stuff. But you better stop at the door. And you tell them to leave it at the door. 2/3 of that person. And now they're walking in with a third. And guess what? A third of your people, my people, are disengaged or engaged. 2/3 are not. I didn't even think about the math like that, but there it goes. So this is the first episode, right? So what would I leave you with, right? I'm a big believer in, I don't want to just talk at you. I actually want to give tools to support where you are. So one of the things I'm going to do is in the notes, it's on YouTube, so the notes or whatever below, I'm actually going to put some questions there and some in the structure of this episode for you, so that you can have it to reflect on, to go back and review as a takeaway. Because I truly believe that if we develop leaders, we can increase everything that we're doing. And so with that being said, I do have a couple questions that I want you to reflect on and to think about as you're going through what you're doing moving forward. Number one, when engagement, this is a question, reflective question for you. I actually have 3 questions. You can do all 3. You can reply in the comments, your answers, or you can, reach out to me directly. We can figure in, and I'll put my my contact information there as well. Or you just keep it for yourself, right? I'm just a resource here to support, to help. Number one, when engagement is low around me, what part of that might belong to how I'm showing up? I'll say it again. When you as the leader, when you realize engagement is low around you, what part of that might belong to how you're showing up? And we talked a lot about this, but it's your turn to talk about it with yourself, right? Brian Tracy, one of my favorite authors from, when I was fresh out of college, had a saying, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So everything I said here might be like, okay, he's telling me. But until you realize that for yourself or see it for yourself, it matters nothing. So this is a reflection question to hope get you to that point if this is a need for you. Number 2, what emotions do people often experience after interacting with me as the leader? I'll say it again. What emotion do people often experience after interacting with me? And this is one you got to be honest with. Do people walk away grumpy? Do they walk away and now they start circling the water cooler to do the gossip? Do they walk away sad, disengaged? Do they need a smoke break every time they talk to you? Do they talk to you? Right? What does that look like? Right? And then number 3, if my leadership were a climate, this is good. What would people feel safe to grow here? Right? Would people feel safe to grow? If my leadership was a climate, would people feel safe to grow where you are? Grow here, right? And I'll end with this. I fundamentally believe, if you made this far, first, thank you, that I look at the business, if you will, as a garden, right? I don't look at it as like this legal entity, etc. I believe it's a spiritual endeavor, and I believe it's a garden. And I look at it like the garden, and I referenced this, and this really connected with me about a couple years ago, of like the Garden of Eden. God's original intent. And I believe that that garden, just like in the original garden, right? There was grass, there were fruit bearing trees, there were seed bearing trees, there were just beautiful flowers, there were etc. etc. Everything had its perfect place. And I believe that every business is the same way. You got sales, you got marketing, you got finance, you got, operations, you may have call centers, you have this, you have installs, you got, technicians, whatever your business might be, right? You got manufacturing engineers, etc., right? Analysts. You have all these different things. These are just different plants and flowers and trees throughout your business. And it is your responsibility as a business owner to cultivate that soil, cultivate that environment so that each and every single one of them can produce what they are intended to produce. And so that's where I talk about, if you were the climate, could they grow under you? Or will they be just like everybody else, or the norm, disengage with half of them waiting to find another job? And I believe that's pretty low, because everybody got a number. Everybody got a number. I just want to believe that. Like, I believe everybody got a number for, like, as it relates to, like, work. Even, I'll tell you this, I get around a lot of business owners. Even business owners all got a number that they would sell that business. Even if they've been holding it for long enough, everybody has a number that is too absurd to say, oh, you know what, that's okay. It's going to take me too long to make that much money. I'll take it now. Thank you. Right? And so with that being said, instead of living that environment where everybody's just waiting on that better number or the better promise at another company that it's not like where they are, what if you can just change that? Where when people now want to leave, they really have to say, oh my goodness, this environment is so productive and I love being here. Not hate. I love coming to work every day. That not only is it going to take a number, but they're going to have to truly prove to me as an employee that environment is going to be better, because I might make more money over there, but I'm not going to be as productive and happy and safe. And you as the leader, especially the owner, executive, etc., you have an opportunity of making that change, not by better strategy again, but by how you show up every day with your emotional intelligence. With that being said, God bless you. I thank you for listening to the first episode of this podcast, and leave me your comments below. I look forward to it. And as somebody I love listening to, Myron Golden, says, I believe you're smart enough to know whether you want to follow this channel or not, this podcast or not. And so I'll leave it to you. God bless. Have a great day.